Hi guys, happy Monday. How are you all doing? Welcome to this coffee chat. I'm going to give you a couple minutes to hop on. If you haven't already, my name is Wendy Taylor. If you don't know me, I'm a registered dietitian, and I come on live every noon for coffee chats here inside the group Ditching Diets Together on Facebook. And if you're watching me live on YouTube, that's great too. If you're coming on, tell me hi. Let me know who you are, where you're from, so that I can chat with you. If you're watching the replay, definitely hashtag replay so I can come back and I can chat with you there as well. This coffee chat today is really for parents that have come to me, and you know who you are if you've come to me in the past, and maybe you've been on and off diets, and you've had your family restricting things like sugar, maybe gluten or dairy, and now that you've come around to this non-diet style of living, you've tried to incorporate intuitive eating into your life for your health. You're asking me questions like, okay, my kids, they knew who I was then, and now I'm trying to incorporate intuitive eating into my family. And what types of language should I use around my kids? I've had restrictions in the past. Now I don't want restrictions around my family. Okay, let's dive in. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee while I'm waiting for some people to hop on. Again, if you're hopping on, say hi. Let me know you're here. Okay. Really, to answer this question for you, what we're trying to do is shift from a control model of parenting to a model of trust. And that's actually what we're doing here as adults, right? In this transition from the world of dieting and diet culture and dieting our whole life to being more intuitive and trusting our body. We're trying to shift from control, which are what diets do with all the rules and the restrictions, to how do I trust my body to know what it needs and what it wants? So we're doing the same thing with our kids. And so we're learning how to shift from a control model to teaching our kids how to trust their body. So, for example, maybe you have a family and you've been dieting in the past and your kids have seen you, go without sugar, or, you have these food rules that maybe we don't eat gluten or dairy is bad for you, and you've said these things. There is an actual framework that you can do and you can follow. This is a framework that I work with you guys on as adults too, but you can do it as parents, and I can show you how. So if you got any questions, definitely I will be looking in the comments. And if you're hopping on, say hey so I can chat with you. But yeah, how to shift. So if you've been sending signals to your kids that maybe certain things were bad about foods, we can work on this framework, which is learning to trust our body around foods again, and learning that we can increase our health by adding a wider variety of foods into our diet. So if you've struggled with this in the past, maybe with yourself or with your kids, I want you to type trust in comments so I can chat with you about this. But the strategy really here needs to be about shifting our messaging. So if you've been given control messaging to your kids, to your family, it's very different than trust messaging. So I want to dive deeper a little bit into trust messaging and what that is. I do want to also talk a little bit about age, because when you're involving kids, age actually does matter, because they develop, at different stages. So when kids are very young, and by very young, I mean preschool to school age kids before they turn teenagers. When they're very young, they basically don't know how to process a lot of the information that we give them about nutrition. So the best thing for them to do to learn is through modeling. And so by modeling, it's this, it's sitting down, it's eating with your family. So it's sitting down, having regular, reliable meals with your family. And then this gives them an opportunity to start to trust, to start to work within the framework, which is the division of responsibility. Okay, when I say a division of responsibility, I'm referring to Ellen Satter. She is a wonderful resource if you're looking to make changes within your family and you're working on being more intuitive. Ellen Satter has something, her model is called the division of responsibility. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that now. So as parents, what this means is our responsibility is to give children regular meals and snacks within the framework. So the framework that I'm always talking about, the process of intuitive eating. You guys, I chatted with a couple of you this week. I put a post out about emotional eating and what times during the day, do you feel yourself emotionally eating more? And a lot of you guys commented it was times during the day, it was either late at night or in the afternoon when you're really stressed out and you're not getting enough food. My question to you was, are you giving yourself regular, reliable meals during the day? And that's really what we're working on with our kids too, is providing them. Part of parents' job is to provide them with regular, reliable meals throughout the day. So as parents, you're giving them regular, reliable meals, and you're giving the children's part in this is they get the autonomy and the freedom to eat different foods, to eat different amounts of foods. You're providing the food to them. You're giving them the autonomy to decide what to eat, to decide how much to eat, to say yes to food, to say no to food. They have a whole childhood to learn the way to eat through modeling from their parents. So I can't stress this modeling enough. Developmentally, for kids, it doesn't take that much time. It takes a lot of time to learn how to eat like grown-ups eat. So they're learning through modeling from us. The best thing that you can do as a parent is to take responsibility of, as Ellen Satter would say, the what, the when, and the how. The what, the when, and the where. So feeding children and allowing them to explore. So allow the kids the how, right? Children, I love watching kids around food. As an intuitive eater now, we're all going back to our inner child. If you watch kids before rules and restrictions came into play, it's so interesting to watch kids around food. They get naturally curious about foods. I was watching an Instagram story, and my girlfriend was teaching her child. She was doing baby-led weaning, and it was so interesting to watch the child like with a sweet potato, and she was like grabbing it, and she would drop it, and she was feeling it. Then it took her a while to decide how to put it into her mouth, and she wasn't sure if she liked it. She threw it down. Second time around, she put it in her mouth. She enjoyed it. It was so interesting going back and now, knowing what I know about food now and being an intuitive eater, watching kids eat and explore. So they're naturally curious about food. And the best thing to us as parents that we can do to try to train intuitive eaters as children is to provide them with the what, the when, and the where, okay? So we don't want to teach the children the adult's job. There we go. Put that on a banner for you guys. So we don't want to teach them the adult's job. They get too much information and they don't know what to do with it. I'm talking about younger kids, right? School-age kids. They don't need to know about nutrition too early on. A lot of children, if we do this, they're going to become fearful around food. Research has also shown that children in the 3rd through the 6th grade can use terms like high fat, gluten-free, high fiber, no dairy, things like that. And they don't really know what it means and they don't really know how to apply it. So it causes them to kind of freeze up and get afraid of certain foods. So it adds a layer to this, like, I don't know what to do with this information that we're giving them. So the question becomes really, how do we shift from this control model of thinking around our kids to more of a model of trust, which is what we're working towards, right? To become more intuitive. You need to think about like those little eyes that are watching us too. So with very, very young children, and this is school age up to tweens, but with younger school age children, the least said, the better. I want you guys to think about our current diet culture that we live in. So we tend to give kids too many words. And my biggest suggestion to you, and if this is a struggle for you, comment family below and we can come back and chat about it. But I suggest to go back to modeling and really sink into your role of responsibility. The Ellen Satter, that's the role for parents is the what, the when, and the where. So really sinking into that role and take control of preparing the food, getting food in front of your kids regularly, on a regular basis. And as hard as it is, I realize this, let them eat as much as they want. Let them eat what they want and offer everything that you eat, offer it all out on the table, but let them make those choices and just sit with them and model. And that means you eat too. So they can see you eating and experience you enjoying a meal and you eating. So children that are older, and by this I mean older than 6, they might start to ask more questions, okay? And this is just like questions, any other questions they might start to ask. And they might start asking about body parts and realize that they're different than, if they're different than this other kid, and the gender questions. And they might start asking you about world events, COVID, things that they're seeing on the news. Kids get curious. So age 6, they might start asking you questions. They might start hearing things in school. I recommend just to answer the questions as far as they take the question. You give kids too much information, it can make them fearful. So, for example, if you've lived a lifestyle and you were demonizing certain foods and now you're turning it around and you're trying to be an intuitive eater and trust and learn that, all foods can fit on your plate. And maybe this is confusing for your kid. And your kid might be like, hey, I thought gluten was terrible for me. And now you're telling me I can eat it. What's up with this? So that can be confusing. I think in this situation, the best thing to do is just sit down and just own it with them. Say, I thought I was doing the best thing that I could. And I thought I was giving you the best information possible. But, now I know better. And I think if you just keep it simple with kids, if they hear that, they'd be like, okay. And if they need you to go further, we're going to approach food in a new way in our family. So in our home, we're going to learn how to trust our bodies. And we're going to learn how to listen to our bodies and be in touch with our bodies. And that's it. I mean, for a 6-year-old, that is probably completely enough and they'll be happy. So kids don't need a ton of information. If they're older, I'd say just meet them where they're at and think about your messaging. So we're going from like messaging of control to messaging of trust. And I think the major thing you can do in a situation, if you've been a dieter your whole life and your kids have seen you diet is to just own it. So if they're older, and they need a little bit more, say, yeah, we're going to sit down as often as we can to regular meals and snacks to feed ourselves so that we can be more aware when our body's hungry and when our body's full, and so we can enjoy foods more. That's kind of giving them the messaging that we ourselves are trying to learn and be as intuitive eaters, learning to trust our body. That's good. That's good messaging, trust messaging for your kids. So for those of you, I know I work with you if you're struggling with GI challenges, if you have gut issues and you're saying, yeah, I hear what you're saying, Wendy, but I know how gluten makes me feel. And intuitive eating is not ignoring your body, first and foremost. I think that's misinformation too. We're not ignoring your body. So you can open this up to, an approach where it's intuitive and you're trusting your body and you know that it doesn't feel good to your body, so you're not going to eat gluten. You can do this and you can still prepare foods for your family and you can still have those foods out on the table without demonizing them, and you can still eat what serves you the best. So you can allow your children to explore food. It might be that your children do fine with gluten. It might be that one of your children does fine with gluten and one doesn't. But you're doing this in a way and you're setting all foods out on the table so you're not demonizing a food. So what you're trying to do here is trying to neutralize an emotional reaction. So the messaging around that food doesn't become controlling. We want to switch it to trust messaging. So the rules that we might have had for this food is good and this food is bad, instead you're allowing these foods on the table. You're tuning into your body. You're letting your children decide what's best for them. So your responsibility is to provide the what, the when, and the where, and their responsibility is the how. So it just means that all foods are allowed. Again, being intuitive is being more in touch with our bodies around food and listening to how they feel and knowing that in this type of work, learning to trust our body, there is a lot of gray area. It's not this very black and white world that you might have lived in the past as a dieter. So one of the big questions that I get, and I'm going to pop this one up here, is I hear this a lot. So people will come to me and they'll say, like, my daughter's getting this information at school in nutrition class. And they did this whole lesson around sugar. And, it's really hard when we're trying to be intuitive at home. She comes home and she says that sugar is bad for me and I shouldn't be eating sugar. So how do I navigate the teacher's messaging in nutrition class? It's tough. I know. Have any of you guys dealt with this or had this situation? If you have, type yes in comments. Let me know. So I hear this a lot. So your kids are getting this misinformation at school, different information than you're giving them home. I'd love to hear your feedback on this. There's a lot of information coming out at school, and sometimes this information doesn't necessarily come from the teacher. Sometimes it comes from peers or other, mentors in the classroom. And, I've heard clients tell me that their kids will come home and they'll say granola bars are not healthy because they have too much sugar in them or something like that. And what's interesting is kids can use these words with each other. So, one kid can pull out a granola bar and the other kid can say, oh, that has too much sugar in it. And that's coming from their household. They can use these words with each other, but they don't always understand the context. So then they come home and they're like, I can't have a granola bar because it has too much sugar. in it. Another example that I have is when they're getting older and they're getting to leave school and go have lunch somewhere. So say the parents give them some money, and say that one of the kids gets McDonald's French fries. And so another kid launches into how, unhealthy it is to eat McDonald's French fries, and do you know how bad it is? In the meantime, these kids go out and what do your kids choose when they go out to lunch? They get money, they choose, pizza, Chick-fil-A, Starbucks, grilled cheese. These are just the things that they pick, right? It opens up the conversation, I think, with older kids to kind of say, like, honey, so McDonald's, fries have all of these ingredients in them, but so does a Starbucks shake. Not demonizing either one, just pointing out. The Starbucks drink has just as many ingredients in it. It's just fancy, So kids are okay with French fries from Chick-fil-A, but they demonize French fries from McDonald's. So if we understand that children learn from modeling, and we have a comment, so I'm going to come back to it in a minute. We understand that children learn from modeling, then we also understand that children struggle with things like they don't really get the food guide pyramid. I know when I was a kid, I didn't. That information isn't very helpful to them. What is really helpful to them is learning from their parents, watching what their parents do. So what would be helpful to our kids is that if we actually sat down with them and we actually ate dinner with them, instead of imposing rules on them that they can't really manage, and honestly they don't know what to do with. So it comes back to modeling. Okay, we got a comment here. Hey, I'm so glad that you joined, Kristen. How are you doing? You can catch the replay and go back and let me know if you have any questions. So I think the system that we teach kids in school is really problematic. And we should actually think about sitting with them, eating with them, and modeling manners. That's another one. Not just the food itself, but how we sit at the table and eat, and food acceptance. This is where they're going to learn and get curious through exposure. And it doesn't have to be like, try this, always throwing it down. But they'll watch you try. And one day they might try. They might like it a different way. So if you've experienced any of these things, Kristen, if you've experienced, type yes in comments. Let me know I would love to hear your stories or your experiences of, what your kids come back and tell you about things that they've heard in school about food, or the food rules that have been imposed upon them from outside sources. So I challenge you, if your kids are very young, I want you to go back and think about how it was for you in school, and how you approach food because of how you grew up around food and how it was modeled for you. I think there are many, many different ways to be healthy, and it comes back to how your family is going to approach food. So you have to come up with your food philosophy as a family. And if you're struggling with what that looks like and what your food philosophy is, or you're struggling with your kids and food at home, definitely let me know. Type family in comments. And yes, with grandparents, friends. So yeah, it is. It's coming from, that's why I think having a really solid family philosophy of how you approach food, so that when they come back, you can kind of bring them back to that centralized like messaging, so that when they do get older and they go out to eat with friends and they start to get more into the politics of food, that they're rooted in their family philosophy around food, and they've modeled, and they've seen their parents, and it can be very impactful to them. So if you say, this is foods that we typically eat, and these are foods that we occasionally eat, you can start to have those gentle nutrition kind of conversations as they get older, as they get curious, as they come home with different questions. These are foods we typically eat. These are foods we occasionally eat. And this is how all foods can fit into a healthy, balanced diet. And there's also, I think, this idea that we classify a lot. I just did it as like healthy versus unhealthy. I just did it. I caught myself. And it's not a simple answer. But when your kids get older, I think you can start to poke more holes into things and get them to think by asking them more questions. But then again, you have to have a really solid foundation and a trust with yourself and your body so that you can pass that on to them. Let's see here. Kristen says, I try to talk about what the food does for their body. Yes. I like that too, in terms of and Ellen Satter talks about this too, play food. There's play food, and then there's come up with another name for it, food that actually the functions, superpower, whatever. I don't like superpower because then that kind of makes hierarchy again, but come up with a word that you can use with your kids. So that helps you to talk about what food does to their body. So Kristen says, some sweets give energy, but it doesn't last so long. That's a great point. That's a great way to talk to them about it. So having some protein with it will help you. I like that. And again, I think it comes back to age, and younger kids, 6 to tween, I don't know that they necessarily comprehend protein, carbs, but if you can find a way to let them know, hey, all foods fit. Some foods are going to help you, like you said, what did you say, Kristen? Give you more energy. Some foods are going to give you more energy longer, maybe because they don't know the concept of protein yet. It's kind of back to that food guide pyramid thing. But finding a way to say it, and then as they get older, asking them questions, teaching them that gentle nutrition. If you don't know what gentle nutrition is, I'm trying to take this comment off. How do I navigate into messaging during? I don't even know. Here we go. Hang on, you guys. Oh, I don't want that there. I don't want that up there anymore. All right. So yeah, this idea that when they're a certain age, so if they're a little young, they might not understand protein, carb, macronutrients, micronutrients, might be a little much for them. But as they get older, you can start to have those conversations. So, it comes back to okay, we can be true to, what we believe in, and we can stick to that. And as far as it's not perfect. Asking the kids questions, kind of getting them to think. So kids they'll get all kinds of information about fat, weight. Oh yeah, they'll get it. It's coming. And food out in the world that we live in today. And I'll say that, you can help them develop these critical thinking skills. And this is the kind of stuff that I work on with you guys, so you can turn around and work on it with your kids. So I'll say that, giving them these good critical thinking skills will help them start to recognize diet culture when it comes at them. And, if her friend says, she'll come home and she'll say, oh, so-and-so is on a diet. Instead, it'll be I'm worried about her, and then you can have a conversation. Or, so-and-so said that I need, whatever, or this is bad, or I need protein, or I can't have carbs, then you can start to ask those questions and start to pick around, start to have those conversations. So for younger kids, I think you can just tell them, we have to be true to what we believe in, and we can stick with that. Older kids, they're going to start to bring home the fads, the food rules. And you can talk some, I think, as they get older about food history and some of the crazy things that people used to do when you were their age. And I can already think of a few. Let me jump back over here. Good point about the protein thing for the youngers. Yeah, listen to the body. Katie doesn't feel and that's true, and that's okay to say. Like, do you feel full? But a sandwich will, and we can have both. I like that. Offering, and then having regular meals and snacks. 6-year-old is super impacted. So Kristen says, my 6-year-old is super impacted by being hungry and tired. So we have to spend tons of time talking about listening to our bodies. That's good. That is so good, Kristen, that you are doing that at a young age, instead of imposing some rule on them that they can't have sugar. Because what that does is that sets them up for that restriction, that control mindset, so that when they get around the candy, all they want to do is grab it. All they want to do is eat the candy. And so she says, what I know is when I'm really hungry, a donut can make me feel yucky if I eat it alone. How about some eggs too? Put it out there and let them decide. And it goes back to the whole parents, division of responsibility. Here we go. Love Ellen Satter, but the what, the when, and the where. If they feel yucky after, great. If they choose to eat a donut and they don't eat their eggs, and you're like, and then they feel crappy afterwards, then you can have a conversation like, why do you think you feel crappy? Because you ate the donut. I mean, to be honest, I love a donut too. And there are some days when I don't have eggs with my donuts, and there's some days that I want eggs with my donuts, and some days the donut makes me feel crappy, and some days the donut doesn't make me feel crappy. That's what I love about intuitive eating, is when you start to listen to your body, there's that ebb and there's that flow, and what one thing works one day might be totally different another day. And so really, I think feeding ourselves regularly, and this goes back to the parents, so this sets us up for modeling, is in that that post earlier this week about emotional eating. I got a ton of you guys say, at night, I feel like I have the most emotional eating after work, late in the afternoon. And when I came back and circled back and I had chats with you guys, it all came back to, are you feeding yourself enough regular, reliable meals and snacks during the day? And every single one of you said, no, I wasn't. So we got to do for ourselves, and we got to model for our children. And that means regularly. That means a wide variety of foods. And you're right, Kristen, mostly unprocessed foods. But putting a donut out there, along with the eggs, and, your responsibility is to put that out there and then let them decide the how. And that can be hard, especially if we're struggling, I think, with our own body trust. But providing mostly unprocessed foods for them, and also giving ourselves room for those foods that we crave and enjoy. So that's how we get that wider variety. Break it down more for teenage children, I think. And then for younger, just stick to modeling. Have the eggs. Have more of the eggs. Tell them why eat more of the eggs. Keep that messaging, keep that modeling going. And I think that is what they need to see. They need to see you actually eating the food. So eating the eggs, eating the protein. You guys, I love chatting about this. If you're catching the replay later, if you're watching it now, definitely comment. Let me know your stories. Chime in. Um, if you struggle with this, type family in the comments so I can get back and I can chat with you. I do want to leave this with one last thing. I mean, this is the first full week of April, and when that happens, it's the Food Confidence Club. So we're enrolling. If you struggled with any of these things that I said today, if you have questions, then come join us in the Food Confidence Club. I invite you. What that is we have different tracks. So we've got coaching calls weekly, 30 minutes. You hop on, you give me your questions. I help you move forward. You get a library of videos. We got a community nutrition Trello board that we all meal plan with. And planning doesn't have to be rigid. Part of self-care is to plan, and especially with families, when you've got crazy schedules and you're trying to model, but it sounds just overwhelming. Planning a couple of meals can really help. And we had that discussion in that, I had that discussion with a few of you guys this week. So yeah, community nutrition Trello board, coaching, library of videos, and a monthly workshop where we go through a topic together, and you have a worksheet, and yeah, you have me for a full hour, a workshop once a month. So if this sounds good to you, then just put me in the comments and I'll get back with you, and I'll leave the link below to join us this week in the Food Confidence Club. $20 a month. So less than a cup of coffee, I think. If you break that down, it's less than $1 a day, guys. So I hope you guys have a great rest of the day. And if you have any questions, please drop them below. I'll get back to you. And I just love chatting with you guys. I'll see you next Monday. Next Monday, I'm gonna tell you more about my story and how I got here in my journey. So I'll see you then. Bye, guys.